everybody, it's Romania Black, and we're on volume 33 of Yona of the Dawn. Yep. I was like, I couldn't wait. No. I took a few days off, longer than when I finished volume 32. I wanted to dive into 33 that night, and I was like, I can't do that. And so I have taken a couple days to kind of process everything and go back and reread volume 32, which I just got done with before starting this. And oh my God, I feel like Kusanagi. I'm starting to feel the pain. I feel that all of you manga readers, you all have been dedicated to this series far longer than I have. But I feel the pain because it's just as we're starting to get answers, just as things are really starting to get good, we're on volume 33, and right now there's only 36 volumes out, and there's going to be 37 in October, and I'm like, we're just now getting to the good stuff, and that's when we catch up. So we talked in the Discord about what I'm going to do. I don't know. I'm really torn because I like the manga format, the volume format. I like reading those 5 chapters, volume per volume. I feel like it is what the mangaka intended, is for you to read it in a volume by volume format. That's what I really like. I'm kind of torn because I do read Twittering Birds chapter to chapter, but it's almost, to be honest, I get frustrated with it because chapter by chapter is so hard, and I'm like, ugh. And a part of me wants to wait on the chapter, but the thing about Twittering Birds is that it could be years before a volume comes out of Twittering Birds. That's too long. With this, I'm like, okay, I'd be waiting 5 to 6 months, which is half a year, but at the same time, I don't know. I really want to do volume by volume, which I think is what I'm leaning towards. But the question is, when I get to volume 37, when it comes out in October, will there be enough chapters I could technically read what would be volume 38, or do I wait for the official version to come out? I want to support Kusanagi because I love her work and I want to give her all the support I can. So I'm still debating it. And I'll see how I feel in another couple weeks when I'm getting really close. As I'm getting closer to the end of the month, we'll see how I feel. And I'll probably poll Patreon and see what they all think too. But I really like the manga. I really don't want to do chapter by chapter. I really don't, because I think that it spoils the format of it. The question is, do I go ahead and read what would be volume 38, or do I wait for the official to come out? That's the big question. But I really like the volume by volume format that Yona has, and I kind of don't want to lose that. Same with Ace of the Diamond. I'm doing that too, and I'm going to do that volume by volume. So it does involve more waiting, which sucks, but it's worth it when you get the full context of what the mangaka wanted to do. So we'll see if I change my mind between now and then. But yeah, I'm really excited for this. Suwon could be fatally ill. Hawk doesn't know. Yona is in this weird limbo between grief and trying to do something about it. Yoon is learning about medicine. I'm like, come on, Yoon. That Senju plant can cure Suwon, couldn't it? And all the while, the dragons, we're learning more about them in Hiryu Palace, and we're learning more about King Il. So lots of things are coming to the surface, and I'm like, and the volume cover is Yona in that damn library, maybe about to find some knowledge out that we've waited 33 volumes to get to. So Kusanagi, my girl, I don't know what you got cooked up for us, but volume 32 is coming out on Patreon tomorrow, but I couldn't wait. I was like, I gotta find out now. I wanted to find out before volume 32 came out because I was afraid of spoilers. And I was like, no, I want to go ahead and read this volume and at least get that out of the way in case if something comes out. So we'll see. But I'm curious, y'all, so let's not waste any more time. We are going to start volume 33 of Yona of the Dawn. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1... and let's go. It's fine. Oh my God, what was this volume? In true Kusanagi fashion, she takes characters that we have had specific feelings about for most of this series and then says, but what if they were 3-dimensional and were actually not as bad as you thought they were? And it's like, oh my God, Yuhan. Oh, well, okay. Because that's the thing, isn't it? I've said this in other series, but flashback chapters are some of my favorites because they really give a creator free reign to just go hard and do whatever they want to, but they also provide a lot of context for stuff that's happening in the story that you just don't normally get unless you go and do that flashback or you talk to a character and get it through exposition. And flashback is a form of exposition. It's just usually a little bit more engaging because it's giving you the chance to see things through a perspective that you don't normally get to see in a story. So like with Yona, her reading the journal that was YON-HI'S, she's getting to learn all this perspective that she herself didn't know. All the tie-ins, everything tying together. Kusanagi's like, we're coming full circle, baby. Iksu, knowing her from the start, or at least knowing her mother from the start. So yeah. But here's the thing about Yonhi. Here's the thing about Il. I don't dislike either of these characters after reading this volume. Yeah, Yonhi, or not Yonhi, Yuhan and Il. Yonhi's freaking great. Yuhan and Il. I don't dislike either of them. You can argue that both of them have done things that aren't great, and they both have character flaws, and they both have personality traits that I'm kind of like, about. But are either of them evil? No. And now a lot of the decision making, a lot of the things that are coming to light that happened, like the reason why Yuhan was not made king, a lot of that makes sense now, and we're going to talk about it. I had to bring Whiteboard Kun out because I'm like, we need to break all this down because it's like, oh my God. But yeah, so I was right. I was like, okay, so it is on his mother's side. They are related to the Crimson Dragon King on his mother's side. So that's interesting. And the Crimson Sickness. So the reason that the Crimson Dragon King, he died, and the dragon gods are trying to call him back. And so each of his bloodline, they try to call him back and make them die early. And that's connected to the dragons too. So, I've got some theories. I've got some questions about all of that. Some theories. Well, but here's the thing. I had a theory I was thinking of as I was about to start this discussion, being like, is the death of the Crimson Dragon King descendant tied to the rebirth of the dragon? Is there a connection there? Like whenever Yon-Hi dies, does that mean that a new dragon is born and the other one dies out too? Is there some connection to that? But the dragons all came, like all 4 dragon warriors are different ages, so that doesn't quite align unless it's somebody from her tribe too. So, I don't know. It seems like just like with the dragon warriors, but you would think, because here's my thing, if Suwon does not have an heir, and maybe that's part of it, maybe let's break this down before we even start through this volume. So Suwon has, and I'm gonna make it red because why not? So Suwon has the crimson illness. And it distinctly shortens his life. It's fatal. He's gotten it from his mother's side. So he has gotten that from Yon-Hi. Okay. Got that from her. Now she is from a village that is descended from the Crimson Dragon King, or CDK is what I'm going to put him down as, right? Now it said on here that the Crimson Dragon King, he had 5 children. And I do like this distinction that the dragon warriors, they don't serve the family itself. That's why Zeno was able to walk away. They don't serve the family itself. They serve the soul of the actual Crimson Dragon King. So that's why Yona affects them and Suwon does not. It's just they are his children. They're the human form, but none of them, they don't have his soul. That's the thing. The dragons, I'm going to put the dragons over here. The dragons, they follow the soul of the Crimson Dragon King. And that currently is Yona, who is the daughter of Kashi and Il. It makes sense that King Il would marry a priestess. It makes sense that he would marry a priestess, and that they being very spiritual would have, because that's kind of the funny thing about it, right? That's the funny thing about it, is that she's a priestess and that they have Yona, and it's kind of this whole like thing about the divinity of it, right? And then Iksu is involved because he was training with her in the temple. Old Iksu. So there is a divinity here, which is funny because it's in direct contrast to the actual children who have none of the like spiritual powers. None of that. They just have his blood. And Yonhi establishes in the journal that the family tried to like, whatever family took over and drove them out. So eventually they were drove out of the palace, the descendants of the Dragon King. They were drove out of the palace, and then they decided they'd try to revolt. Didn't work. And so then they kind of just changed their mind and was like, well, then we'll go into seclusion and not reveal who we are so that people don't like try to hurt us. It's kind of like what happened with the Dragon Warriors. They hid those powers away so that people wouldn't persecute them and try to hurt them. And we kind of see what happens. We kind of see what happens when all that comes to a head at the end with this temple leader. And the thing of it is that you kind of get where Il comes from, and you kind of get where Yuhan comes from. Now, we're going to put Yuhan and Il on here and kind of put, we're going to put Yuhan right here, and we're going to put Il right here and kind of talk about them as we go. And then we'll have Yonhi. We'll have Yonhi over here. Okay. And we'll put Yonhi over here. And we know a little bit about Kashi in this. Okay. Oh, we got a lot of answers. A lot of answers and tie-ins and all sorts of fun things. But God, this chapter was, at the same time, it was both relieving to finally get answers, and it was frustrating. These last volumes have been frustrating. I'm like, Kusanagi, you are throwing us through the ringer. And I'm like, I just want Yona and Hawk to be together, but we can't have nice things yet, can we? I want to read volume 34 so bad. I feel I'm in this bad place because on the one hand, I want to keep reading these volumes. Like, I want to just binge them. But then on the other hand, I know I'm almost caught up. And so I want to like hold off and savor it as much as I can. That's why even though I said I was going to immediately jump from 32 to 33, I was like, no, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait and like let it linger. And now I'm like, oh God, I want to read 34 so bad. And I'm like, but no, I know what's going to happen. So I said at the beginning of this discussion, this video, I was like, I'm not going to read past when I get caught up. Okay. So it's funny that we're going to bring the dragons up here, that we do have the king, the sword, and the shield. And according to Iksu, he said the sword and the shield would be awakened. So there is the king, and then the sword and the shield. And we still, I'm gonna keep that on hold. As I'm going through this discussion, I don't want spoilers if you manga readers know what my answers are. I don't want spoilers, hints, or clues. I have a feeling the next couple volumes we're going to get some answers. Or even if we don't yet, it's fine. Don't tell me. Don't tell me. But, oh my gosh. So I do think, I like poor Kija. Kija's like, we're getting fat and sassy here because we're not doing anything. We're getting to like leave the lap of luxury. And then Sheena's just sitting there munching on everything. And I love that Zeno's like, when they ask where Jaiha is, Zeno's like, he's probably got his butt stuck in a pot. And that's exactly what happened. I was like, oh my God, yes, please. We get all the fan service in this volume. Did you want Yuhan fan service? I didn't know I needed Yuhan fan service, but here we are. We got Jaiha fan service. We got a great color spread with Hawk. Kusanagi's just dishing it all out. Like, all right, you ready for some fan service? Because here you go. But yeah, so Jaiha feels frustrated because he's like, Yona's not in danger, but she clearly doesn't want us to get involved for a reason. And so he's like, we don't need to get involved because it seems like if we try to rush in to help her, we'll just make matters worse for her. So he's like, she wants us to back off and stay away because she's dealing with this whole thing with Suwon. He's like, so we should do what she asks, even though she's not directly ordered us to do anything. But he's like, it's frustrating. He's like, I'm at a loss. I don't know what to do. I want to help her, but she doesn't want our help right now. So what do we do? And Zeno's kind of like, and I like that Kija's like, did you tell Hawk what she said? And he's like, not yet. He's like, we don't need to bother with Hawk with what's going on right now. Just Hawk will find out when he finds out. But I just love that Jaiha's just sexily over here with a towel over his head, just being all dripping wet and lovely. And he's like, it must be. And of course, Jaiha and Hawk, that whole bonus chapter where we find confirmation that Jaiha and Hawk have been like, they met each other back then. Shut up, Kusanagi. Stop it. And the hint that he's going to get the glaive. I do like I do like that it's not the glaive he ends up with. I do like Kusanagi said that, because I was like, that was going to be kind of cheesy, but no. It's a little bit better than that. But yeah, Jae-ha knows exactly how Hawk feels. He's like, it must be hard for him to not be able to guard something that he cherishes. He's like, Hawk is in the same boat as the dragons. Hawk cherishes Yona and he can't protect her right now. The dragons want to protect her. They can't do it. So they're all kind of in the same boat. And so meanwhile, Yona is dealing with the fact that she's like, I want to see all my friends and I want to make sure they're safe, but I also want to kind of see this whole thing with Soo-won through and find out what's going on, right? And so she tells Min-soo that she'll keep the secret. She's like, I know that you're in danger because I know that Hawk is in danger because I know, and I know that the dragons are in danger. So she's like, I'll keep it all a secret. Which it turns out to be irrelevant. Everybody but Hawk knows. Oh my God, when Hawk finds out, I don't know how he's gonna react. It's probably gonna be like a combination of bad and worse. But I don't imagine it's gonna be a great reaction, but everybody now knows except Hawk. Because Zeno knew. Zeno knew all along. We'll talk about Zeno when we get to him, but Zeno knew from the start that something was up. Zeno's known all along. Great. So they're planning to invade Kai Empire, right? They're planning to invade Kai Empire and to go there. That's their plans. That's what Soo-won's working on. So Cuely the bodyguard. The only I get bad vibes from Cuely, not that because he looks older too. He looks like he's like older. He was older when Yuhan and them were younger. But he feels like Hawk makes note that he's the only man he ever thought could beat him. I don't like where that's headed. I don't like that. That seems like ominous foreshadowing. I don't like that. But he's an assassin and he worked for Lady Yon-Hi. So he was Lady Yon-Hi's bodyguard, and in turn he becomes Soo-won's. So we have Cuely, who is the bodyguard. All right. It makes sense that Yuhan would put Cuely in charge of Soo-won because if he's afraid Soo-won will suffer from the same sickness. There's that. Also makes sense now why Soo-won looks like his mom. Them genetics, them Crimson Dragon King genetics, they're pretty strong, even internally and externally. That was a terrible joke. I laugh to not cry in this volume. But yeah, Soo-won inherits his mom's looks. Her genetics are pretty strong. He gets his looks from her. But he does have, it's interesting. We'll talk about their personalities of Yon-Hi and Yu-Hon. We'll talk about their personality traits. I feel like Soo-won is more like his mother. I feel like his personality traits are more like his mom's, but he gets a little bit from his dad. And so he does care about Yona, because poor Yona, her neck is bruised. I'm like, Hawk better not see that bruise or he's going to think that Soo-won caused it, and he's probably going to get mad and get himself hurt. But the confirmation that Cuely was the one that was chasing after her in Volume 1 when she found Soo-won killing King Il. Like, there's that revelation that comes out. And so Yuhan seems like he's trying to just, like, pour through the documents and figure out things. And he's been constantly like trying to learn things for whatever reason, but he doesn't seem to concern about the Dragon Warriors. We'll talk about that. But yeah, but Yona, she's like, I need to talk to him. She's like, I don't want to be able to not speak to him. Like, this isn't good, right? She makes a comment later on. Yeah, she makes this comment here that she's like, I need to be able to come and see him. She's like, my actions have been limited. I can't go places. She's like, I want to be able to see you. She's like, I'll keep your illness a secret, whatever it is, but I want you to stay within reach. She's like, if he really does have a fatal illness, she's like, if you really have a fatal illness, I won't have the satisfaction of punishing you or even a chance to properly grieve if I can't come talk to you. She's like, and that's like, she's like, you can't, I want to be able to find out why you did the things that you did. And I know you can't talk to me about them right now and you don't want to, but she's like, if I can't come see you, it's always going to nag at me that I was not able to see you before you died. And so, yeah, I don't blame Yona at all for wanting that. She's like, as the daughter of King Il, I have the right to see how you live your life. She's like, you took my father from me. I have the right to see you. She's like, I just wish I could put this on hold. And I love that Yona and him, they're standing side by side on equal terms, as equal terms as they can be at this point, that she's standing up to him. And God, it's just like the comparison of her from volume 1 to now and how much she's grown and changed as a person, and her and Soo-won, like how they view each other. It's insane, right? And Soo-won lets her go see him. And so she's like, okay, I can see him. I can start getting information. Everyone's safe. We're all fine right now. She's like, I can handle this. I can do this. She's like, for right now, it's fine. We can handle this. It's all going to be okay. Everyone's in a good place for the moment, so I can find information. But yeah, just the fact of wanting to put Soo-won's illness on hold. She's like, I wish I could stop this. So that, because it seems to be progressing rather quickly. And so then, God, the end of this chapter, though, was so hard because she sees Hawk, because she sees him, but she knows she can't talk to him because of that bodyguard. I think if the bodyguard wasn't around, if the bodyguard hadn't been there, I think she would have talked to him. And I wanted her to talk to him so badly. I wanted her to see him so bad. I wanted him to see her so bad because I'm like, you can tell they both want to talk to each other, but that bodyguard, if he saw her with him, he would have attacked Hawk and probably killed him. She's like, no, he'll have an excuse to execute Hawk, and she's like, I can't do that. And so there is a parallel. I want to make note. I'm going to put it down here with Yona and Hawk. It's the craziest thing that Kusanagi does. Kusanagi gives us parallels with Yona and Hawk to Yuhan and Yonhi, and with Soo-won and Hawk to Yonhi and Yuhan. I was like, damn it, no! I was like, how dare you, Kusanagi? But the idea of Hawk's, I'm going to point this out to them, as well as Soo-won. We're going to put him over here too. Yep. Yuhan's, when he embraced Yonhi after he thought that she was gone, like the moment he sat down and hugged her, I was like, that's Hawk. That's Hawk. Yuhan embracing her, that's Hawk. And Hawk wanting to see her. I feel like Yona has a lot in common with Yonhi in terms of being dedicated to her family, in terms of being dedicated to like her keeping the promise of keeping that, keeping the illness a secret, is very similar to Yonhi keeping the promise to her village and to her family. Like, Yona and Yonhi have very similar personality traits. And I could see why Soo-won would cherish Yona and that explains in the last volume when he passed out and he woke up in Yona's arms, he says mother, like he questions if it's his mom, because Yona's a lot like his mom. So that makes sense. But then Hawk is a lot like Yuhan in that devotion to her. Like, he wants a woman he can trust. And I will say this, Hawk is much more of a romantic than we've seen Yuhan's still a little rough around the edges, right? Yuhan's a little bit more gruff, a little bit more. Yuhan's kind of like Quelbo, honestly. Yuhan reminds me a lot of Quelbo. And Quelbo and Hawk had similarities too. I talked about that. But Yuhan and Quelbo kind of had a lot in common. They seemed like they were very similar. And Quelbo loved Yuran because he trusted her, and because he said she was the most trustworthy, strongest woman in all of, the Sin province. That's kind of like Yuhan valuing Yonhi. So you can kind of see like a little comparison. I compared him a lot to Hawk, but honestly, I think he's most like Quelbo, who is like Hawk. so you kind of see it. It's like in a roundabout way, but I feel like that devotion that Yuhan had towards Yonhi is very similar to Hawk's devotion towards Yona. And the thing about it is, Hawk loves Yona despite her being the Crimson Dragon King reincarnated. Hawk could care less about that. He loves her despite it, in complete irregard of it. And Yuhan loved Yonhi despite all of that whole thing with the Crimson Dragon King, the Crimson Illness, everything. He loved her regardless. And I got choked up when he told the mom, he's like, I don't care if she's going to die early. I don't know what my life's going to be like. And he ends up dying before she does, that we know of. So yeah, he's like, I don't care if she has this illness. I don't care if she's gonna, possibly die young. He's like, I don't know what my future brings, but I know that I love her now. Why would I turn her away from it? And it like broke my heart. I was like, oh my God. Like that just love and devotion to her. It just, Kusanagi was like, you all think that you hate Yuhan, but what if he was layered? What if he was human, But I hate the end of this chapter when Hawk tries to find her And she forces herself to hide from him because he looks so confused. He's just like, he knows it's her. He's like, why is she running away from me? And he's not sure why. And Yona, like, having to, like, muffle her crying. I just want them reunited. I'm like, Kusanagi, I don't think that's hard. Could you please give us that, like, in the next volume or two? I don't feel like it's going to happen next volume, but I'm like, and I know what she's setting up, and I don't like it. She's setting up for Hawk to go fight the Kai Empire, because the one guy makes the comment, he's like, oh, Hawk and them are going to get sent off. He's going to be transferred from this squad to the squad to go out. Because here's the thing. Kishuk is not going to send out the Dragon Warriors to fight Kai Empire. One, they established in this volume, they are not going to fight the Kai Empire because Yona's not there. And Suwon was like, whatevs. So they're not going to send the Dragon Warriors to Kai Empire, but Kishuk wants Hawk out of the way. Because Judo hates him, Judo's afraid of him, and Hawk is the greatest threat to Suwon, aside from his illness. So I would not be surprised if Kishuk's like, okay, Hawk, you're going to go with the army to go fight the Kai Empire to try to get rid of him. I'm like, so I doubt that they're going to reunite next volume. And that's so frustrating. That's so frustrating. No! So yeah, the whole chapter about the Crimson Dragon King, it's great. And Hawk's trying to figure out what's going on. And Hawk has grown a lot over the course of this series. Hawk has gotten to the point where he's like, you know, Hawk from 10 volumes ago, he'd be like fighting tooth and nail to go find Yona, but he trusts Yona and he knows that what she's doing is for a reason. And so he's like, well, the Dragon Warriors can't see her, so there's probably something up. He's like, I'm going to trust Jaeha and the others that they'll take care of this. He's like, it's fine. It's okay. But he also, Hawk being a member of this army, is learning that they are probably going to go to war with Kai Empire. And he's probably being like, okay, everybody's preoccupied. He's like, I could go find her, but something's up. So I need to hold back. And he's like, and he felt there was someone he couldn't defeat. And it's Kyuli. He was Suwon's sword master. Yeah, I'm like, I don't like that. He kind of has like a Sheena vibe to him, like an owl vibe to him with the long hair and the scar. So that's keeping Hawk at bay too. He's like, something's up there. And so they take Yona to go see Suwon, and Yona gets bad vibes from Kyuli as well. She's like, he just has a very menacing presence. And so I like Suwon's like just chucking his robes off. We're getting Suwon fan service. I love that panel of him like taking off the robe in the library with his hair all down. So we're getting lots of fan service in this volume. And so he kind of like, Suwon is kind of a little bit cold here in the library at first because he's like quizzing Yona on what she knows about international politics. And she's like, bitch, I've been there. She's like, I've been all over the place. She's like, you've been in this palace. I've been all over the place, which Suwon has kind of followed her around too. So that's hard to say. But she knows, she's trying to prove to Suwon, she's like, I'm not in the dark. I've learned some things along the way. I may not know as much as you because I haven't been able to pour myself in this library like you have, but I do know enough. And I'm like, okay. And so then he gets this like new robe on from Minsu. And then Kishuk shows up and says, now Kishuk says that the Dragon Warriors were not being forced to participate, that they chose to do so. And I'm like, yeah, kind of, but you kind of lied a little bit. I feel like Kishuk kind of forced them to show up and join it, but then they had the right to go away if they wanted to. And then so all Suwon cares about is that Zeno's there, which is still fascinating to me, that Suwon is kind of interested in Zeno and his immortality. It bothers me a little bit that Suwon's so obsessed with it, but if you have a fatal illness, I can see why it's kind of like Mizari, why there's an appeal there, even though Mizari didn't have a fatal illness that we know of. But I love that Yona questions, she's like, why would they ask to be in a military exercise? And then she thinks about it and she's like, wait. And then it all like floods back. She sees all of them being like, we need to go do something. We're bored. And she's like, no, that checks out. I like that Yona knows them enough to know, no, they would definitely be all about it. Especially Kija. Right? And so Minsu asks about the Senju herb. And Yona tells him a little bit about it. And I'm like, go Minsu, go find Yoon. Use the Senju herb. Maybe it could help prolong Yuhan's illness or Suwon's illness. Maybe it could prolong it. Anything at this point would be helpful. So I'm like, maybe they're going to do something with that. I feel like they leave. Minsu leaves after having the conversation about the Senju herb, and then we don't see him again. So that tells me, I'm like, okay, is Kusanagi setting up Yoon and Minsu to be working on some kind of concoction with the Senju herb, possibly to help Suwon? I don't know, but they leave them off to go do their business, so we'll touch base on them later. There's too much other stuff to cover in this volume. God. But yeah, so Yona talks about all the documents. And she talks about how, if a member of the royal family dies, then suspicions arise. And so then she questions, she says, Yona, you were born under a red star. No matter what happens, you won't be alone. And we see her mom holding her. Now, this is a big question. So the question is, was her mom really killed by bandits? Did Kashi get killed by bandits? Was that really the case? So, what Kashi's death? Kashi's death is a big old question mark. However, knowing Kashi was a priestess, now, I'm going to guess that I'm going to put out a theory, and I do not want you to tell me if I'm right or wrong. Let me wallow in my ignorance until we find out from Kusanagi. Kusanagi-senpai tells us. But I'm going to guess that if Yuhan, I'm going to guess that if Yuhan hated the priest so much and that she was a priestess, would Yuhan go so far as to... And I'm not saying that Yuhan killed Kashi. I'm not, because Yuhan clearly liked his brother. He thought his brother was corrupted by the high priest, but he did love his brother. So I'm like, but what if Kashi's death was inadvertently caused by something that Yuhan did? And that what if King Il did kill him because of that? He's like, you killed my wife. Like, what if he did? I don't know. The whole thing about King Il murdering anybody, from what we've seen of King Il in this entire flashback, seems like, unless the high priest told him to do it. I don't know. We'll talk about that when we get to the high priest. But Yona questioning if her mother was really killed in an attack by bandits. I don't know. At this point, I think it was something else. And for a moment, I wondered if Yona was maybe connecting the fact that maybe she thought that she herself was going to suffer from the crimson illness, like Suwon. Maybe for a moment, Yona was like, am I going to suffer the same fate as Suwon because we're related? But it's not through Il or Yuhan. It's through Yonhi. So no, Yona's does not have the crimson illness. She's not even related to the Crimson Dragon King. Suwon is. So it's great to have confirmation of that finally. It's so good to have confirmation of that finally. It's like, okay, yep, Suwon is related to the Dragon King, but the dragons serve Yona because she has the original king's soul in her, reincarnated. Good. Glad that we've got that. So Hawk sees the dragons show up, but the dragons are too far away to really talk to Hawk, which is good. I do love that panel of all of them standing there. They look so serious. Zeno's hair is so floofy. And so the best panel, though, of maybe this whole volume, it's not the best panel of the whole volume. There's so many other good panels. But one of my favorites of the dragons is, Ki just like, wow, there's all these soldiers. And Jaeha's like, I would have rather liked to see some ladies than these guys. Zeno's like, we're outside, yay. And then Sheena's just like, I found Hawk. I love Sheena. I found Hawk. Like, it's just so straightforward and to the point. Like, because he can see from far away. So he can see where Hawk is. Good. Even if the others don't even notice. So Suwon shows up and asks them to participate in a military exercise. And so, again, I like the dragons stand up for themselves. And they're like, we're not a sideshow. We're not here for your amusement. And then when they go to fight, Ki just like, fine, I'll fight him, but not using my powers. And good thing for Rappa. I feel like Rappa thought he was going to get the brunt of something. But he's like, our only master is the Crimson Dragon King, which is to say Princess Yona. We're not going to use our powers unless you get her to come out here. And for a second, I thought it was going to work. For a split second, I thought it was going to work. I thought they were going to get Yona to come out there, and then Hawk would be able to see her, and then she'd be with the dragons. But Suwon, old tricky Suwon, he's like, fine. Without your powers, our army's unbeatable. We don't need you. And that ties to that whole thing about Yuhan. Yuhan, he very much gets it from him, is that Yuhan does he's not religious. Pretty agnostic. Not religious and relies on the power of the people. And Suwon is very much like his father in that sense. Very much like his father. And Yonhi, she seems like she does not value the gods because they've just brought her misfortune. She's like, I don't know why we'd pray to these dragon gods because all they do is kill off my family when they're young. She's like, they don't offer us protection. So she's kind of confused by the whole temple itself too. She's like, well, she's confused. She's like, well, Il, you seem like a nice person, but you're praying to this temple, but they didn't bring my family anything and we're directly descended from them. They didn't bring us any good fortune. So how does you praying to them do anything to you? So it's interesting, right? But that's when Zeno, when he turns to go by Zeno, he kind of stops, and Zeno senses that his headache is about to come back, and he says he'll go chat with him. And he asks Suwon if he's okay. And he's like, you have excruciating headaches. He's like, I'm the yellow dragon with the power of immortality. And he starts to sweat, and he's like, I know about your mother. I know the symptoms. And he tells him to stop, but he's like, no, you have the crimson sickness, which only afflicts the Crimson Dragon King's bloodline. He knows. He's known this whole time because Zeno's been able to walk this earth all these years and keep tabs on everybody, and he's kept tabs on the bloodline of the Crimson Dragon King. And he's like, yeah. He's like, just like your powers have been passed down through the ages, so has the Crimson Dragon King's as well, in secret. So, I'm wondering if Suwon thinks, if Suwon is like, what if Suwon's like, let's stop the bloodline. And he's like, nope. It all makes sense now. I mean, I don't think Suwon was attracted to ladies to begin with, to be honest. But Suwon's like, I'm not having any kids because we're going to stop the bloodline now. We're going to end this whole stupid... He does not like the idea of the Crimson Dragon King. He says the last thing we need is the Crimson Dragon King. Because he knows what that people... Kusanagi's established in this series kind of like the dark side of religion and the idea of like zealots and people who just rely so much on religion and myth that they lose sight of what's right in front of them, and that they go to such extremes to try to control the power of divinity that they kind of lose sight of what it's all about. And we've seen that time and time again in this story. And Suwon's like, we want to avoid that because that leads to bad things. It leads to gobies. We don't need gobies in our life because they're no good. And so my theory is that Suwon's like, fine, I'll die out. I'll be the last king. I'll leave the bloodline to someone else. But there won't be any more Crimson Dragon King. And I wonder, here's the crazy thing. I wonder the Crimson Dragon King's bloodline is tied to the dragons. So I'm wondering if Suwon dies, will the dragon powers go away? I don't know. I don't know if Suwon dies, will the dragon powers go away? If there's no more Crimson Dragon Kings, will it go away? Or the other thing is Suwon actually the last one that has that bloodline? Is he the last of the Crimson Dragon King's bloodline? Because she came from the village. They all seem to have some connection to it. Kind of like, that's the thing that's tricky, because with the Dragon Warriors, with the exception of Zeno, if Kija, Sheena, or Jeha die, someone from their village will be the next dragon. They'll inherit the dragon powers and they'll be the next one. In Suwon's case, is Suwon the very last of the Crimson Dragon King's bloodline? Or is the village from Yonhi from... There were 5 children. She kind of makes a reference that makes me think that some of the 5 children's families could have been wiped out during that whole rebellion. However, if Suwon dies, is that really going to stop the Dragon King's bloodline? Or is there going to be somebody from Yonhi's village, that would be able to keep carrying it on, kind of like the Dragon Warriors? We don't know that yet. That's not been revealed. But I'm wondering if that's Suwon's plan, if he thinks that by dying, he's going to get as much done as he can while he's alive. And then after he dies, he's set everything up for Koko to be safe. And then the Dragon King's bloodline will just die out. And would that mean that the dragon powers would not transfer to any future generations? I don't know. It's just a theory. But Zenos kept lying. And the image of Su-won as a child with the king's crown on his head. Ooh, and just that burden. And Su-won looks so sad. Where he's like, that blood runs in his veins. And it also makes sense why Su-won does not like religion either. Because he's like, it's a curse. He's like, it cursed my mother. It's cursed me. Why would I want to believe in that? Why would I want to celebrate that when it's something that's only brought me pain? Mm-hmm. And so they basically established that Yona is in fact the reincarnated Crimson Dragon King. His soul is within her. So that's why the dragons are affected by her. The Crimson Dragon King had 5 children, but the dragon warriors only served him. So yeah. And Yona's not part of that lineage, so it was inherited through his mother. Yep, he's bound by blood like the dragon warriors. So Su-won, it's the funniest thing because it's like by blood, Su-won is bound to the dragon warriors, but then because of his strength, Hawk is bound to the dragon warriors, kind of. Hawk's like an honorary 5th. Hawk and Su-won are honorary 5th dragons. Why? Why are they connected? Kusanagi, why do you do this? Because, yeah, Hawk is like the honorary 5th dragon warrior. He's the dark dragon. And is Su-won like the white like the light dragon or whatever? Because he's just... Because he's connected by blood, just like them. He doesn't think Yona knows, but he says the Crimson Dragon King, that's the last thing the world needs. Yeah, and that is tied to the fact that he's like, no, people will fight over those divine powers. We saw it happen with Gobi. We don't want that to happen again. Meanwhile, Yona finds the diary. All the books fall down. She finds his mother's diary. And she learns about the sickness that is afflicting. And I love the effect of like the light shining and the hair going whoosh through her hair when she says that Su-won's descended from the Crimson Dragon King. I love that visual. It's just mwah. It's so good. It's so freaking good. And it's no ordinary illness that he suffers from. And then we get Yon-HI'S story. And we have like the tomb, like the little coffin has like a little dragon on it. That her father succumbed to the crimson sickness. So we're just ordinary people. Half our tribe suffers from an incurable illness. So that's the thing. Half our tribe, we're all descended from the 5 children. So yeah, if Su-won dies, the bloodline's not necessarily gone. Someone else from their tribe could still have the blood of the Crimson Dragon King flowing through his veins. And that's how that goes. Yeah. Father said the dragon gods were trying to call the Crimson Dragon King back to the heavens. And that's why he wasn't sad. So it's like he was happy to go back because it was like their short lives mean that the dragon gods were just calling him back. But she doesn't see it that way. And so then that's when... And then the falcon! Jeek! So Jeek the falcon. Jeek the falcon. And tying that to Su-won having Gulfin, but then also to Hawk. Okay, look, there's this phrase. There's this saying. I don't know if any of your cultures have this saying too, but there's a saying that sometimes women are attracted to people that are like their fathers. It's not always true, right? It's not always true. But there is a saying that a lot of women are attracted to men that are like their fathers. And the moment that we see Jeek and we see Yuhan, I was like, well, that's why Su-won likes Hawk. Because Su-won's attracted to Hawk because he's like his dad. It's like, oh my god. But yeah, no. There are parts of Yuhan's character that are very similar to Hawk. He's kind of a troll, like Hawk. Yuhan's kind of a troll. He seems very, very devoted to Yon-Hi. And he's very, he gets very touched by her, and, when he hugs her and everything, that's all like Hawk. But like I said, he's also a lot like Quilbo. He's a little bit more rough around the edges. He's not as romantic or compassionate as Hawk, I don't feel like. But he's an interesting character. But yeah, he, just like his whole attitude with the boar meat and everything, But it's like Yuhan has been painted as such like a villainous character this entire time, and he's really not. I mean, the thing of it is, he does things that it's trying to find that balance between you have the fact that he could be a warlord, but also is complex, right? And you have the idea that Il was loving and compassionate, but was meek and easily swayed by religion. And he had this idealism that wasn't realistic, right? And Yuhan seems like a pretty pragmatic person, right? But he is also very stubborn. And so you have the idea that Il is idealistic, which can, to a fault, and Yuhan is stubborn to a fault. Because he kind of ignores Yonhi for a little bit when she's like, "Hey, I need you to do these things." He's like, "No, I'm doing it my way." And she's like, "Okay." And so she kind of just goes along with it. But I love that Yonhi, she has this strength to her. She has this resolve. And strength, but also this kind of like quiet courage to her. And I feel like Suwon is a big combination. He's more like her. I feel like Suwon's more like his mother, but there are parts of Yuhan, like his resolve and his like fierceness, that Suwon can kind of embody as well, right? But her going back to where her people are from. And so why'd you make Yuhan attractive, Kusanagi? Why? But yeah, he has a lot of Hawk-like features to him. And then but here's the thing. Hawk is much, I can't believe I'm saying this, Hawk is much softer than Yuhan. That cover spread where he's like doing the thing to Yona's cheek, he's much softer but he's also a lot like Yuhan. So it's like, oh God, what? So, But yeah, so anyway. So we have them going to the palace, and then we see Il. And Il has like the frills, and he's with Moondog. Good to know that Moondog being all young and everything and youthful, Moondog and Il have been friends for a long time. You know, they did say Moondog was a matchmaker, so he's been trying to set, Yona and Hawk up for a long time. But yeah. But so Il has this whole thing where he gets on to Yuhan for not going to the temple and worshiping. And he's like, and Yuhan considers it to be you're bowing your head, you're lowering your head, which when Yonhi goes to the temple, she figures out, she's like, yeah, he is lowering his head to the priest. She's like, I can see why Yuhan hates it so much, because Yuhan's very much like, nobody's above me. And Il kind of seems to have a bit more reverence and is much more meek about it. But he says, I'm praying. And he says, Father even goes once a month. You should at least go several times a year. And he's like, who wants to go to that revolting temple? And he's like, well, to pray to the Crimson Dragon King. And he's like, do you want your people to look down on you even more? So there is a part to Yuhan yelling at him here that he's like, have some self-dignity. He's like, people make fun of you because you don't stand up for yourself. Right? And King Il's like, well, and so I get the impression from these chapters that Junam might, I get the impression that maybe Yuhan might have done something that was seemingly reckless by driving out the priests, because King Il establishes that their father is at least somewhat religious. And so I wonder, one, if the priests told Junam that he was married to a descendant of the Crimson Dragon King and that their child would possibly die young as well, and that persuaded Junam to be like, oh, well then we can't have that. Kind of like what the mother warned. And at the time, Yuhan was like, I don't care about any of that. And it's like, well, but he may have cared once Junam said no. And not that he didn't care about Yonhi, but that he did. I have the feeling that what happened, I'm like trying to collect my thoughts because there's so much in this volume. I have a feeling that what happened was that Junam, who is somewhat religious, may have been swayed by the priests. Now, by being swayed by the priests, that could mean that they told him that Yuhan was married to a descendant of the Dragon King that had the Crimson Sickness, and that she and her child would die young, and that it would not be good for the kingdom because they would not have a long-living heir. So they could have told him that. It could also have been tied to the fact that Yuhan wanted to drive out the priests. So he wanted them to leave. If Junon was somewhat religious and him and Yuhan got into a big argument about it, and he's like, well, if you won't have the priests, you're cursing us. Because King Il kind of makes the comment, he's like, we're praying to the gods for good fortune. And if Yuhan drove them out, Junon may have been convinced that, well, now we'll have misfortune, so I'm not going to make you king because you'll just bring our kingdom to ruin. Which, inadvertently, it all comes back around. So there's multiple reasons why, but I'm starting to see now why Junon would have put Il in charge. It may not have been because he wanted to put Il in charge, but because Yuhan's actions in marrying Yon-Hi may have made him think that that had to be a decision he had to make, or him running out the priests may have also tipped his hand in that as well. I'm thinking we're going to find out next volume because it feels like this flashback is not over yet. We're going to find out next volume. I'm just speculating and thinking out loud. But the thing of it is that what really wins Yuhan over with Yon-Hi is that she treats his brother with kindness, and that King Il's really kind to her, and she recognizes that and acknowledges it. So when the concubines are with him, I'm with her. I thought they were his wives too, and I was like, is this, again, like Quellbo? I was like, is this going to be like a multiple wives situation? But he's like, oh, these girls just won't leave me alone. But she stands up for King Il when they make fun of him. She's like, hey, he showed concern for someone like me, like a commoner like me. And they're like, what of it? And she's like, my anxiety melted because of that. He has the ability to put people at ease. And that's kind of what Yona inherits. She inherits that ability to put people at ease. And Yuhan's kind of moved by that. He shoos the other women away, and he keeps her. And he says, I can trust you. And it's almost like he kind of proposes to her right there and then. She's like, we just met, sir. She's like, we literally just met. So no, I'm glad that she didn't immediately agree to his proposal. She was like, no. She's like, I just met you a day ago, right? But he gave her like the flower hairpin, kind of like what Suwon does with Yona. And that expression he gives her when he says, you seem like someone I might be able to trust, that's a very Hawk-like expression. So the parallels are there. They're not lost on me. But he's not totally like Hawk. Not totally. And so she kind of laments. She's like, Prince Yuhan invited King Il to go hunting with him. He wants them to do something together. I wonder if he's annoyed because he wishes he and his brother meshed better. His words are harsh, but very passionate. Again, Hawk and Suwon. Hawk's words are harsh but passionate. He's mad at Suwon and annoyed, and it's because he probably wants them to be able to mesh together better. But there's this whole, everything that's happened the last 32 volumes in the way. So, Kusanagi, why? And so that makes her smile, thinking of the fact that she's like, I don't know if he'd get mad if I called him endearing. But her smile and everything is kind of like Suwon's. Mm-hmm. And so I love, this is so damn romantic. Kusanagi, you give us this romantic where they meet every 7 days and they go there and like he brings dumplings from the palace to eat with her, and then they go on like walks through the valleys and they talk about things, and he tells her about the tribes, and they have like all these dates together. It's really freaking romantic and beautiful, and he's so kind to her and he clearly loves her. And then he basically like asks her to marry him. He's like, I remember when I told you I wanted to marry a woman I could trust? And she's like, oh, is that what you're talking about? And she's like, you should listen. The way he proposes to her is exactly how I imagine Hawk proposing to Yona. And her reaction is pretty much like Yona's. Kusanagi, if you don't give us a Hawk-Yona proposal by the end of this manga, I'm going to be mad. Mm-hmm. I know you can top this. This is pretty damn good, but I know you can top it. But her mom doesn't want her to see him again. And so for a month, she listens. And she's like, I love my family, so I won't. And she's like, he'll give up on me. It'll be okay. And so she goes about her business, but then she sees Jeek, and she goes after him and sees that he kept coming back every week to see her. He kept coming back. And him hugging her, and he's like about to cry when he sees her. Kusanagi. And he's like, why didn't you come? And he's like, I haven't been able to sleep. And she's like, I'm not a woman you can trust. He's like, are you an enemy spy? And then that whole thing where he like grabs her head to tilt her back. He's like, I don't care if you're a spy. None of that matters to me anymore. And he like kisses her. I would just like melt. Like I just want to melt into a puddle. And the way she draws Yonhi on the next page with the hairpins looks just like we've seen Yona too. Just the parallels. But God, I want to see Hawk like grab her and kiss her like that. Like Yona, like that. Kusanagi, if you could get on that, that'd be great. Oh my God. But yeah, so these chapters, and we see them like in their bedroom together. I'm like, oh my God, they like get engaged, and they're like, you know, I'm like, it's about as sexy as it can be. You know, I'm all here for it. And the mom tells him about the bloodline, and he's like, we'll keep it a secret then. He's like, we won't tell anybody. It'll be our secret. It's not infectious. He's like, why should I give up on her just because she has a limited amount of time left? He's like, she may die young and she may not. I could die any day too. If you want to live in peace, I'll make sure your entire tribe is left alone. So he keeps it a secret to protect her tribe because that's what Yonhi wants. And so you can't get mad at him for that. So the thing of it is that there is the secret. They keep the secret between the two of them, between Il and Yu-Hon. Yu-Hon keeps the secret to protect her family. That's the reason that he keeps it. But we'll talk about Yu-Hon and Il. But that's why he keeps the secret. And it's like, yeah, it all makes sense. That's him, like, he wants to, I'll protect Yonhi and all of you. And so I kept my lineage a secret and came to the palace. I love that. And then we get fan service with him in his robes and their bed chambers. I'm like, I want Yonhi and Yuhan fan fiction now. Why? Why have you done this, Kusanagi? No one asked for this until now, but now it's like, yeah, yep. Mm-hmm. And so he says, once I become king, I'll make changes. He's like, he talks about the priest. He's like, I'll never use that temple for our wedding. He hates the priest because he believes that the priests are, how does he describe it? He's like, all they do is meddle in politics under the guise of divination. I love that because it's so true, right? It's so true. There are people who are religious for the right reasons. It's your faith, it's what you believe in, it's like your spirituality. Like there are people that practice it in good faith. And I feel like Kashi and Iksu are good examples of that because they don't seem like they're dabbling in politics, but they're in training, right? But there are definitely people in our world that take religion and use it to disadvantage others and use it for political and personal gain. There are Gobis in the world, and there are whoever this high priest is. And Yuhan hates them, right? And he's like, my father and Il take them seriously. Once I become king, I'll make changes. And he's like, I'll just get all that out of here. And Yonhi's like, oh, okay. But baby Iksu showing up and just like, boop. When we first saw him, I was like, that kid is too small to be Zeno, and it's obviously not Suwon because they haven't had Suwon yet. So I was like, who could that be? And then it was Iksu, and it's like, oh my God. But yeah, he's like, I'm sorry for startling you. And when she says adorable, I'm like, all of us are thinking the same thing, like adorable, freaking adorable. Baby Iksu, like the little flower, like little bloom coming out of his robes, and he's covered in like bruises and dirt. That poor kid was clumsy from the start. But then we see Kashi. Now Kashi, she has Yona's eyes. Yona has her eyes and her face, but her hair is that black, and it's just like all she has the unfortunate middle part, you know. But then, and I love that she's so much shorter than Yonhi. Like she's very, very short, and Yonhi next to Kashi, it looks like Suwon next to Yona. The height difference and everything. It's interesting. And she talks about being like a priestess in training, right? I guess when she stands up straight, she's about the same height. And she has freckles and everything. Like Kashi has freckles. And so Yonhi and her, like, they bond. Everything's great. And then King Il shows up, or just Prince Il. And at the time, it does not seem like Prince Il and Kashi are engaged or together yet. It doesn't seem so. He just asks how they are. And it would make sense that Il would see Kashi a lot because he goes to pray at the temple a lot, so he would see them constantly. So I'm guessing in the next volume we'll get something with that. But him and Kashi seem to be together, or they at least seem like you can see the seeds planted where they're going to be together. You can see that. And so, but Il talks about how the Crimson Dragon King is a symbol of Koka. If we cherish him, the dragon gods will protect us. If we neglect it, it will lead us to ruin. And he's like, when you and my brother are blessed at the temple, it'll guarantee our stability. And she's like, well, that's really nice of you to think that. But the only thing that the dragon gods have given us who are directly descended from the Dragon King are early deaths. And we see her like halfway drowning in the water. She's like, so I really don't think that worshiping him is tied to the stability of Koka. I don't think that's the case. And he asks if she wants to visit the temple. And King Il, he means well by it. He's just asking her to come see it. He's like, come on. He's like, come see it. It'll be nice. You know, it's like when your friend drags you to church service, you know, it's good meaning, right? He's like, come on. So he very much, he's drank the Kool-Aid, King Il has, that the Crimson Dragon King is going to lead to the stability of Koka. But again, that is somewhat flawed because again, you can see where Suwon is getting this from, that no, relying on a religion is not going to keep your people safe. It is not going to bring stability. You have to do something and you have to act on things. And so I totally get where Yuhan and Suwon are coming from in that they're like, no, there has to be action take place. You have to make your own will come true here to make sure that people are safe. You can't just pray to something and say that you're not, and then not do anything. And it's so funny because we've talked about this in other series. I'm watching Vinland Saga right now, and this exact same conversation is coming up in Vinland Saga. It's kind of amazing. Like the connections between Vinland Saga and this series and Attack on Titan are all kind of interwoven. But in Vinland Saga, without spoiling anything, there are characters talking about how, you know, it is good to have faith and religion, but if you just sit there and are passive and expect that you don't have to do anything, you'll just rely on the gods to save you, that's not good enough. You have to also act. And so Suwon and Yuhan are kind of like that extreme of, no, we don't need religion, we just need people. And Il is kind of the opposite extreme where he's like, oh, we don't need people, we just need the gods. So where do you find that balance? And I feel like Yona is that balance. Yona is like, yes, I know I'm tied to something divine, like the Dragon Warriors, and that is a spiritual, supernatural thing, but I also am working through my own actions to make the country better. Like she's kind of combining both of them together and being that balance. So I feel like she's the embodiment of the king, but then the Sword and Shield, we'll find out later, I'm sure, right? But they go to the temple, and I love, okay, I'm sorry, but the little image of Il and Kashi holding Iksu's hands as they walk towards the temple is really freaking cute. It is really cute. Like, I can't hate Il. Il has a lot of flaws. He does. And a lot of his practices are not good. But to say he's a bad person, I don't think you can say that he's a bad person because, like Yonhi says, he's very kind. And Prince Yuhan knows how wonderful his brother can be. She's like, if only the two of them could find a compromise over the temple. That's the thing. She's like, they just need to find a compromise. And I feel like that's where Yona would come in. She's kind of that compromise in between the two, right? And so, yeah, the temple, I like that she immediately notices that the temple is more impressive than the main hall of the palace. Like, the temple is more impressive than everything else. And we get the high priest, right? And she's like, I know why Yuhan despises this place. It was built so the high priest can look down on the members of the royal family who are kneeling before him. Because, yeah, that's the thing. That's the funny thing, is that it's not a tomb. There's like a throne there. So it's not like when Il said he was going to pray at the temple, I imagine like the mausoleum of the Crimson Dragon King. You prayed to the Dragon King's mausoleum, and then you just went about your day. But no, there's a person sitting there that's on a throne higher than the king. That's why Yuhan's mad. That's why he doesn't like it. But they do have some divine, like, powers, because they can sense that Yon-Hi is the descendant of the Crimson Dragon King. He senses it. Kashi senses it. Iksu's, I think, too young to sense it, but he's kind of like Gobi. And she's like, no. She's like, don't get me involved. And so Il, who has been kind of indoctrinated into all this, he kind of freaks out because he thinks that she's connected to the Dragon Warriors and that her family, he wants to know where her family is. And that's exactly what Yuhan promised that he wouldn't do. He wouldn't reveal them because he knows how sacred that is. And he tries to get her out of there. And I think he knows that she didn't tell. They just found out somehow. And he looks very angry about it. And Il's like, the sacred bloods return to the palace. Isn't this a good thing? It's the will of the heavens. And Yuhan's like, you don't understand. Like, no, I don't care about that. And he's like, Yon-Hi isn't a god. And that's the thing. That's what drives him. He's like, quit treating her like she's any different just because you found this out. And so then Il is definitely in the wrong here, because he's like, did you think that if I learned she was descended from the Dragon King that I'd want her too? And it's like, nope, that's not it at all. And he's like, despite mocking my reverence for him, you wanted the Crimson Dragon King too. You were keeping the blood to yourself. That's not it either. It's like, Il, your brother loves you, but he doesn't like that you've drank the Kool-Aid. So, and then, yeah, and he punches King Il. He punches the prince, and everybody's just like, ugh. And you can tell Yon-Hi, like, you can tell Yuhan instantly regrets it. He's like, I should not have punched him, but he was wrong. And he's like, the priests had learned of my heritage. That was a spark that ignited their horrible persecution. So I'm assuming their persecution was it's either the priest's persecution or her family's. Either way, it does not look like it ends well. And we're going to find out in volume 34. But yeah, it's like, it's so hard, because I have a feeling that in this volume, we see Il says things that he should not have, that were not true, and it got Yuhan mad. But I have a feeling that just as Il was wrong to say those things to Yuhan because they were not true about her or him, I have a feeling that Yuhan is going to act in ways that are not going to be good, that are not going to be true of any of this, and it's just going to make a big old mess. Yep, this is all just... But I'm glad that Yona's reading this, because I feel like Yona learning about the past. The thing about, if you learn from the past, if you learn from history, you won't make the same mistakes again. So I feel like Yona reading this, she's going to be like, oh, okay, let's not make the same mistakes again that my father and your father did, Suwon. Let's not be like our parents. Let's be different. Let's be better than that. I think Suwon wants to be better, but it's clear that Yona loves her parents. It's clear that Suwon loves his parents. Neither of them are evil people. They've both been wrong on different standards. Although, at this point in the story, it paints Yuhan in a much better light than Il, which is insane, because this entire series, you wouldn't think that. We've been seeing Yuhan as this kind of villainous character, and in this volume completely 180s your view of him. And it's like, wow, Kusanagi, okay. So where do we go to from here? But it's basically just showing, kind of like, again, with other series that I've been watching, that both sides, neither of them are evil, but both of them have different perspectives. And there are parts of them that might not be good, parts of them might not be right, but they're not evil people. They're just people that are bound to their beliefs and their morals, and they're just acting on those. I do think King Il was in the wrong in this volume, but next volume, there may be things that Yuhan does that we go, okay, like Yuhan chucking the heads at the walls, that sort of scenario. So, Kusanagi, you're brilliant, and this volume was wonderful. Cheers to that. Oh my God. And so then we get the bonus chapter. which is great. The bonus chapter where they basically learn about the glaive. It's all cute little shenanigans. I love the miffed faces of Hyundai and Taeyu where they're just like, with their angry badger faces. And so there is a little nod in here about how the dealer says that King Il won't let them sell weapons if you're under the age of 16 without their parents' approval. That no dealer observes those restrictions. King Il doesn't pass any good laws. If another nation attacked, Coca be finished. And so that's kind of at this point, when we see at this point in the story, we know that King Il's been in power for a while and that he's trying to make this utopia and this ideal place, but they are very much going to be at a disadvantage if anybody tries to attack them. So we are getting like shades of that. And then they established that the Wind Tribe is like the weakest tribes of the 5. And I hadn't even thought about that, honestly. I hadn't thought about the fact the Wind Tribe would be the weakest. I was like, what? Really? But no, it makes sense. It makes sense. It's like, oh, wow. Yeah, the Wind Tribe is at a disadvantage. They have fewer soldiers, and their people are kind of like in a friendlier, meeker place. Kind of like it makes sense why Moondog and King Il were friends, right? They're kind of similar in that regard. And then Hawk saying that I have to get away from the Wind Tribe because if I spend too much time in this friendly place, I'm sure I won't have the edge that I need. Hawk's like, I love my tribe and I love my friends, but I've got to get away. I won't even come close to being a match for him. For Suwon. I'm like, Hawk's going to lose it when he finds out that Suwon has this illness, isn't he? Don't answer my question, but it's not going to surprise me if he's going to lose it, and I'm going to lose it if Hawk loses it. So, because he's wanted to match up to Suwon this whole time, and Suwon's wanted to match up to him this whole time, and I'm like, fine, just kiss and get it over with, and then go marry Yona and have like a polycule. just do it. So, and he's like, I know that I'll want to see them desperately before I become any more entrenched. And he wants to see Yona. Yeah, Hawk wanting to become a match for Suwon. Hawk and Suwon are soulmates, but Yona and Hawk are in-game. Can I just say that? Is that just it? Hawk and Suwon are soulmates, but Hawk and Yona are in-game. And at this rate, it seems that may be the case. No, I don't want Suwon to die at this point. I've never wanted Suwon to die in this entire series. I haven't. I've wanted Suwon. I think Tony Simi commented in one of the last volume comments that she left. She or he or they. This volume has me so like mixed up, but I will say this. Tony Simi made this comment. I entirely agree with them on it. And that is that I've never wanted Suwon to die in the story, but I've wanted him to sit down with Hawk and Yona and explain everything. Why he did the things that he did, why he killed King Il, what his plans are. Now that it's out that Yona knows about the illness, the dragons know about the illness, it is only a matter of time before Hawk finds out about the illness. I want them all to sit down and be like, okay, well, what do we do now? What now? And I feel like at this point, yeah, maybe Suwon is intending for Hawk to become the king eventually. I don't know. Maybe after he's been thinking about it, he's like, if I've got this illness, I want Hawk to become the king. I don't know. But I love that guy ran off with the glaive, and Hawk's like, I'm a big fish in a small pond, but I know that I've got to get stronger so that I can help to save the bigger fish in the bigger pond. And then Gigan, the moment I saw that hood and that pipe and them bangs, I was like, Gigan's here. And I was like, does that mean that Jaeha's here? It does, and it's wonderful. Just like the very first time they met in Awa, they both meet kicking and punching someone. It's wonderful. And Jaeha just glances at him for a moment. Oh my god, it's so good. I'm like, Kusanagi, how dare you? How dare you? And that's when Hawk decided he wanted a glaive. He was going to save up and buy himself one. Mm-hmm. And Jaeha was like, man, that one kid was pretty agile. We should totally recruit him as a pirate in 7 years. Maybe. Not 7 years, because Jaeha's 20 and I guess it was 3 years. So this was just 3 years ago. Or, no, Hawk is 18 or 19, right? So this would have been like 6 years ago. Okay. 5 or 6 years. Interesting. But yeah. Oh, y'all. This volume. I do love the editor's note. The note she left here at the very end of the volume where she says, my editor said the story of Yuhan and Yonhi meeting was the closest I've come to creating a girls comic. That's odd. I thought I've been working on one this entire time. Mic drop. I was like, that's the best damn afterword out of the whole series so far. She's like, I have been working on a girls comic. It doesn't always have to be lovey-dovey fluff. We can have all this other stuff too, you know. Ladies like complex, dark, violent things too. We just want some romance to balance it out. Why not? This volume is incredible. And I can't believe I'm shipping Yuhan and Yonhi so hard now. I can't believe I'm kind of in a place of understanding with Yuhan that I never thought I would be. But I'm so curious about volume 34. But I do want to wait a little bit and let this volume soak in, get some comments with volume 32, and then go into volume 34. So yeah. But I hate that I'm getting closer to catching up. I hate it. But what can we do? So at least we have 34, 35, 36, and 37. We got 4 more volumes before we're caught up volume-wise where Kusanagi is. And I'll do some research in the time being to see about volume 38. So I know I've talked for a long time. I've talked for like an hour and 15 minutes on this volume. But I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. I hope you all enjoyed this reaction discussion. There's so much I could discuss about, but my mind is just like swirling inside. So there's so much that I could still talk about, but I'm curious in the comment section. I want to talk with you all about it. So please no spoilers, but I want to talk with you all down below. In the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. I will be back very soon with more Yona of the Dawn. Bye.